Boo 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 boo, beep boo, beep 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 boo, beep boo. Alright there, you little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and authorly hosted Choose Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the Crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you, yes, you the person who is, while they are enjoying the lovely sunshine we have here in the UK for a brief moment, is utterly dreading 12:30 today, because that is the day that both me and my partner Kerry are going to a boxercise class with Steve, an ex-army drill instructor. I heard him shouting through the walls last time I went for a run down at the gym. I am terrified. So, if I don't appear on next week's episode, know that he killed me. He did it. Yes, you get to decide what list I tell that to you each and every week, and this week we have none other than David Silver for their suggestion of intense video games that kept you on the edge of your seat. Why pay for the whole seat when you only need the edge? We're not talking about edging, but what we are going to be talking about instead are video games that, whether they were horrific, tense, or just so full of action, kept you right on the precipice, glued in place, locked in, super dialed in, and focused to make sure that you saw this through to the end of the experience. Much like watching Big Pidge. What's that, mate? Upcoming new film that he's got here. Big Pidge, Way of the Warrior. He's travelling to Japan. I don't know why he's already got a spin-off where he's going there rather than establishing that he should be here in the UK. I ain't gonna complain. I ain't gonna argue with him. So let's have a chat about it. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games that were so intense it kept you glued to the edge of your seat. Or a title that Si's just put up on screen that is kind of approximation of that, because I don't have my script in front of me. So let's kick things off by talking about number 8, Alien Isolation. Now it's pretty telling that around only 15% of Alien Isolation players have actually beaten this game, owing not only to its surprisingly long runtime, but also to how absolutely nerve-shredding an experience it actually is. A first-person survival horror alien game was basically a dream come true for many of the series' fans, and yet the end result could arguably be said is a little too stressful for its own good. Rather than facing the xenomorph head-on as Ellen Ripley's daughter Amanda, you're generally tasked with avoiding it at all costs. Basically like me with any form of mild responsibility. Yet here's the problem. This becomes incredibly taxing because the game's genius AI gives the impression that the xenomorph actually learns your actions throughout and will hunt you down no matter where you are, meaning that every single interaction with the alien is a total pulse pounder. All the more so as players are acutely aware that there is nothing they can do about it but run away. Between this, the shrewd use of jump scares, and general atmosphere of the space station, Alien Isolation is a gut-wrenching experience that is genuinely tough to play through for extended periods. It's like, and I know that Si will back me up on this, you know when we were playing like Resident Evil 2 Remake and you're like, whoa, Mr. X is here, whoa, look at that hat, it was all like, that's pretty terrifying, until you realise that he couldn't come into the safe room and he's just kind of like poking his head and he's like, are you done in there? Daddy says I'm not allowed. Daddy says I'm not allowed in this room. Are you going to come out of the room, please, so I can bash your head in? And you're like, no, I'm just going to stay here and develop pictures. Bit awkward, just go away, mate. That ruined the sort of like fear that he created, because he'd be like, oh, this big lumbering idiot's going to come along and I'll just duck into this room. However, in Alien Isolation, very different. You're just sitting there and the vent's just like, he'll never catch me in here, he'll never catch me in here. And the alien's just like, I can hear you talking, mate. I figured it out with my 2 brains. We know that you're there. Oh, Number 7, Cuphead. Cuphead's gorgeously old-timey cartoon aesthetic belies the fact that it's one of the most brilliantly, hellaciously palm-soaked games of the past decade. A dizzying run-and-gun game that'll test the mettle of even the most die-hard bullet-hell fiend, Cuphead will leave you anxiously dodging projectiles as you try to fight your way to the end of each stage and take on the fantastically creative boss battles that are waiting for you. Even accepting that Cuphead's bite-sized levels are fairly respectful of your time compared to its genre brethren, these frantic sprints can be enormously stressful due to the sheer amount of plate spinning that is required of the player, and doubly so if you try and complete it with a mate who is a fraction less skilled than you, because you're like, keep on dying, mate, keep on having to resurrect your ghost. It's only so many times I can do this motion before it starts going into a fist. Now, the feeling of satisfaction when you beat a tough level is immense, though you might feel the overpowering urge to go for a mind-clearing walk around the block afterwards. Again, do not be fooled by those charming-ass visuals. This is one of the most adrenalized boss rush games. Boss rush games. Yes, one of the most adrenalized boss rush games out there. Number 6. Doom Eternal. 2016's Doom reboot ingeniously reimagined the Slayer as a boogeyman of sorts to the denizens of hell, in turn morphing this game into one of the past decade's most electrifying power fantasies. But sequel, Doom Eternal, basically made its predecessor look like child's play, amping up the speed of combat and the sheer number of monstrosities that are being thrown your way, making skin of your teeth survival dependent on your penchant for crowd control. And that's without even getting into some of the game's most dread-inducing new threats, such as the Marauders, by far the most divisive enemy in the entire game, if not the flippin' franchise. Overall, Doom. I'm trying to Doom. Sound like Mr. Bean here. Imagine if that is the Bean Slayer. I'm pretty sure that one of the lads back at school would have termed themselves that. Oh, mate, you get on well with it. I'm the Bean Slayer. Fucking hell. I've double parked on the pop here because I've basically got Mr. Bean as the Doom Slayer in mind, and that stupid, corny, edgelord joke that I've just made there. Just oh my god, watch out! Clump, clump, clump. Burn. You're going to die. Burn, burn. It's the Burn Slayer. Overall, Doom Eternal requires far greater precision and dexterity than its still challenging yet much more forgiving predecessor. Enough so that by the time you've completed the roughly 15-hour campaign, you'll be totally frazzled and craving a nice, relaxing bubble bath. Oh dear me! I've popped myself out. I'm done now. Big pitch. You don't need to put the gun down. I don't need to. Don't threaten me no more. Number 5. Phasmophobia. Even accepting that survival horror hit Phasmophobia is best played cooperatively, safety in numbers isn't so much the order of the day here, as rounds of ghost hunting so often descend into, well, the experience of shared hysteria. Phasmophobia's ingenious hook sees teams of up to 4 players attempting to identify which of the game's 24 ghosts is haunting a given locale, and then trying to steer clear of the ghost while they start hunting the team down. To maximize tension, there's no way for players to fight back and kill the ghost. Instead, you've basically got to hide, wait it out, and hope that the ghost doesn't find you, which is made all the more difficult when one of your team members realizes that you can speak to the ghost, so they're just walking around just going like Robert Smith from The Cure. Robert Smith. Or just like, imagine that, ghost of Big Bitch, just walking around here, just like, Big Bitch, and he's just getting more and more irate, just like, his wings are quivering, he's gonna get ya. As such, Phasmophobia is a giddy haunted house ride of a game that is packed to the gills with an impressive variety of sneaky scares, enough so that play remains compelling across countless hours. With multiplayer survival games being a dime a dozen these days, Phasmophobia's use of dynamic scares helps it stand apart, delivering a brand of shared terror that is really hard to put down, even though it is tense from start to finish. Number 4, Max Payne. Though the original Max Payne was sold on the strength of its undeniably amazing bullet time gimmick, it is far from the easy, breezy, balletic shoot-'em-up that many probably assumed it was when they picked it up. For starters, the original game is actually a pretty tricky affair, especially compared to its more accessible sequels, forcing players to approach each gunfight as its own separate puzzle. Like, I went from Max Payne 3 back to the original, and I got killed so many times. In Max Payne 3, you can just kind of like dive in and figure it out on the fly. Whereas this one here, if you dive in, you're just on the floor where somebody walks up behind you with a shotgun. It's like, idiot. Knowing when to deploy Max's limited ability to slow down time and where to aim your guns is paramount for success, ensuring a high degree of trial and error as players enter each new room packed with meat-slabby goons. The slowed time does little to blunt Max Payne's intensity, and that's without even getting into the stress of managing your health-replenishing supply of painkillers. They do have that satisfying noise there when you do it, that little... It's not a duck, but you know, Sai will hopefully have played the sound here and not just have me standing making that noise. And of course, it'd be remiss not to single out the game's infamous nightmare sequences, whose janky platform mechanics are ultimately far more likely to spike your blood pressure than even the trickiest action engagement. Hi. Ooh, I would have said that I lost sleep over this, I would have said I lost hair over this, but I probably just lost years of my life as my blood began to boil from the inside out. I was a real Jamie Lenman fizzy blood sort of thing. Number 3, Subnautica. Now, Subnautica pokes and prods at our lizard brains by so perfectly harnessing thalassophobia, that is, the primal collective fear of deep bodies of water. Even those with a fond fascination of the ocean deep are unlikely to enjoy Subnautica as a purely serene adventure because, well, there is a ruthless emphasis on how utterly oppressively hostile this world below can be. This is often referred to as a horror game in disguise, because the further you delve into the drink, the more likely you are to discover some thoroughly pant-filling creatures primed to make short work of you. Perhaps most famously, the massive Reaper Leviathan. Beyond this, though, it's the pervasive sense of loneliness, of bobbing around in a vast watery expanse that simply doesn't think about you at all that makes Subnautica such an existentially terrifying playthrough. And yea, per its god-tier atmospherics and gorgeous visuals, it's incredibly tough to pull away from. Number 2, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is an absolute face melter of an action-adventure game. For while its actual combat isn't terribly complex or stressful compared to most other games on this list, the overall audio-visual experience absolutely is. Hellblade does a masterful job of conveying protagonist Senua's psychosis, using binaural audio to inundate the player with a constant stream of Senua's inner voices that whisper around the soundscape. And with that in mind, it's not without good reason that developer Ninja Theory recommends that you play this game with headphones, even if it ultimately might be a bit too immersive for many, because seriously, when you're playing that game with all them that whisper behind you, just get off. You ever listen to that? It's like a famous thing on YouTube. It's like barbershop audio, and it's not just people singing. It's like the sound of like getting a haircut in a barber's. But it's done in binaural audio, so it feels like somebody's right behind you, and there's such an uncanny vibe of like, your brain is actively tricking you into thinking there is a person standing right by you. And I've played Shenmue. I know what happens when the barber comes around with a cutthroat. I'm not meant to press that QTE. But sometimes, get away. Even though I am slapping the actual cutthroat razor there. It didn't end well for me. It's a fake hand. All in all, Hellblade's fine-tuned atmosphere is so suffocatingly thick that you'll be glad it's over after around 5 hours. And that's a weird statement to say. You'll be glad in the sense that you can finally relax, but you'll be missing it as well because it's such a great experience. And number 1, This War of Mine. And finally, we have a game that categorically is not a good time, but is certainly well worth playing. So let's talk about This War of Mine. This brutal war survival game certainly isn't a breathlessly fast-paced murder-thon, but instead mines enormous player anxiety from the tough decisions that it forces you to make. The goal here is simple. Try to keep a group of civilians alive for as long as possible in a besieged fictional city. Because most of the civilians have little experience with such a scenario, you're tasked with keeping them alive by managing their health and scavenging materials, all in the hope that you can just, make it through long enough for a ceasefire to be called, which occurs only after a random amount of time. Even the most basic tenets of making it through the day become massively arduous here, enough so that when you encounter NPC survivors outside your dwelling, the temptation to rob or even murder them for your own game, it starts to rear its head. It ain't a good feeling. But This War of Mine always keeps humanity at its forefront, ensuring that few will want to simply play as selfishly as possible. Each tough decision is a bitter pill to swallow, all while waiting for a salvation that may or may not be around the corner. And trust me, if you want an intense experience, I've got one specific scenario, and that is when winter hits, all of your firewood gets taken up because of the fact you've got to heat the damn place that you're in, which doesn't even have a functional roof in some areas, and then all the people start starving, then they get sick, and then you add the child element into it because there was a DLC expansion pack that added children into it, and you're just kind of like, my heart, my bloody heart, like, I've just gone salvaging all day, and I brought back a toy, and I've got nothing to eat. There's a board game version of it as well, and it's just as tense. It's one of those things. Check it out. Don't check it out. If you want to have a good time, don't check it out. Be missing out on a great gaming experience. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 intense video games that thoroughly gripped you. I hope that you enjoyed that. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, and put your suggestion for next week's episode down there as well. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on my social medias, over on Blue Sky over there, where it's at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. You can follow my lovely editor site over on her social media over here as well. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Even though we spoke today about intensity, sometimes it's a good thing to dial that intensity down, to take a bit of a chill, take a step back from situations that are causing us stress, and try and gain a bit of perspective, because that is a very important life lesson, my friend. Just because something rears its ugly head and you feel you have to dive in to deal with it, make sure that you're committing to the right actions before you do. And that involves you taking a step back and thinking, do I need help with this? Is this the right approach? Am I mentally ready to deal with this? Those questions, percolate them around. You'll be surprised that sometimes you just go, oh, actually, I'm going to leave this for a bit, or ask somebody to help me with it, and it's going to make this a lot easier. Do that for yourself, all right? As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.